19. In those days, Israel had no king. Now a Levite who had lived in a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim took a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah, but she was unfaithful to him. She left him and went back to her father's house in Bethlehem, Judah. After she had been there 4 months, her husband went to her to persuade her to return. He had with him his servant and 2 donkeys. She took him into her father's house, and when her father saw him, he gladly welcomed him. His father-in-law, the girl's father, prevailed upon him to stay, so he remained with him 3 days, eating and drinking and sleeping there. On the 4th day, they got up early and he prepared to leave. But the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Refresh yourself with something to eat, then you can go." So the 2 of them sat down to eat and drink together. Afterward, the girl's father said, "Please stay tonight and enjoy yourself." And when the man got up to go, his father-in-law persuaded him, so he stayed there that night. On the morning of the 5th day, when he rose to go, the girl's father said, "Refresh yourself, wait till afternoon." So the 2 of them ate together. Then when the man with his concubine and his servant got up to leave, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said, "Now look, it's almost evening. Spend the night here. The day is nearly over. Stay and enjoy yourself. Early tomorrow morning you can get up and be on your way home." But unwilling to stay another night, the man left and went toward Jebus, that is, Jerusalem, with his 2 donkeys and his concubine. When they were near Jebus, and the day was almost gone, the servant said to his master, "Come, let's stop at this city and just spend the night." His master replied, "No, we won't go into an alien city, whose people are not Israelites. We will go on the Gibeon." He added, "Come, let's try to reach Gibeon or Ramah and spend the night in one of those places." So they went on, and the sun set as they near the Gibeon in Benjamin. There they stopped to spend the night. They went and sat in the city square, but no one took them into his home, for night. That evening, an old man from the hill country of Ephraim, who was living in Gibeon, the name of the place of the Benjamins, came in from his work in the field. When he looked and saw the travelers in the city square, the old man asked, "Where are you going? Where did you come from?" He answered, "We are on our way to Bethlehem in Judah, to the remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, where I live. I have been to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I am going to the house of the Lord. No one has taken me into his house, and we have bought straw and fodder for our donkey, and bread and wine for ourselves, your servant, me, your maid servant, and the young man with us. We don't need anything. You're welcome at my house," the old man said. "Let me supply whatever you need. Only don't spend the night in the square." So he took him into the house and fed his donkey. After they had washed their feet, they had something to eat and drink. While they were enjoying themselves, some of the wicked men of the city surrounded the house, pounding the door. They shouted to the old man who owned the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with them." The owner of the house went outside and said to them, "No, my friends, don't be so vile. Since this man is my guest, don't go this disgraceful thing. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out to you now, and you can use them to do to them whatever you wish. But to this man, don't do such a disgraceful thing." But the man would not listen to him, so the man took the concubine and sent her outside to them. And then they raped her and abused her throughout the night. And at the dawn they let her go. At daybreak the woman went back to the house where her master was staying, bare down at the door, and lay there until night. When her master got up in the morning and opened the door of the house and stepped out to continue on his way, there lay his concubine fallen in the doorway to the house, with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. Then the man put her on the donkey and set out for home. When he reached home, he took a knife and cut up his concubine, limb by limb, into 12 parts and sent them into all the areas of Israel. Everyone who saw it said, "Such a thing has never been seen or done, not since the day of the Israelites came up out of Egypt. Think about it, consider it. Tell us what to do." 20th. Then all the Israelites from Dan to Beersheba and from the land of Gilead came out as the man and assembled before the Lord in Mizpah. The leaders of all the people of the tribes of Israel took their places in this assembly of the people of God. 400,000 soldiers armed with the sword. The Benjaminites heard that the Israelites had gone up to Mizpah. Then the Israelites said, "Tell us how this awful thing happened." So the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, said, "I and my concubine came to Gibeon in Benjamin to spend the night. During the night, the men of the Gibeon came after me and surrounded my house, intending to kill me. They raped my concubine, and she died. I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, and sent one piece to each region of Israel inheritance, because they committed this lewd and disgraceful act in Israel. Now all your Israelites, speak up and give your verdict." All the people rose as one man, saying, "None of us will go home. No, not one of us will return to his house. But now this is what we'll do to Gibeon. We'll get up against it as the Lord directs. We'll take 10 men out of every 100 from all the tribe of Israel, and 100 from 1,000, and 1,000 from 10,000, to get a privilege for the army. Then, when the army arrives at Gibeah in Benjamin, it can give us what they deserve for all his villainies done in Israel." So all the men of Israel got together and united as one man against the city. The tribe of Israel sent a man throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What about this awful crime that was committed among you? Now surrender those wicked men of Gibeon so that we may put them to death and purge the evil from Israel." But the Benjaminites would not listen to their fellow Israelites. From their own towns, they came together at Gibeon to fight against the Israelites. At once the Benjaminites mobilized 26,000 swordsmen from their town, in addition to 700 chosen men from those living in Gibeon. Among all these soldiers, there were 700 chosen men who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 swordmen, all of them fighting men. The Israelites went up to battle and inquired of God. They said, "Who of us shall go first to fight against the Benjaminites?" The Lord replied, "Judah shall go first." The next morning the Israelites got up and pitched camp near Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to fight the Benjaminites, and then took up battle positions against them at Gibeon. The Benjaminites came out of Gibeon and cut down 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. But the men of Israel encouraged one another and again took up their positions where they had stationed themselves the first day. The Israelites went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and they inquired of the Lord. They said, "Shall we go up against the battle against the Benjaminites, our brothers?" The Lord answered, "Go up against them." Then the Israelites drew near the Benjaminites the second day. This time, when the Benjaminites came out from the Gibeon and opposed them, they cut down another 18,000 Israelites, all of them armed with sword. Then the Israelites, all the people, went up to battle, and there they sat weeping before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. And the Israelites inquired of the Lord. In those days, the ark of the covenant of God was there, with Pulin son of Israel, the son of Aaron, ministering before it. They asked, "Shall we go up against the battle with Benjamin, our brother, or not?" The Lord responded, "Go for tomorrow. I will give them into your hands." Then Israel set an ambush around the Gibeon. They went up against the Benjamites on the third day and took up positions against Gibeon as they had done before. The Benjamites came out to meet them and were drawn away from the city. They began to inflict conquest on the Israelites as before, so that about 30 men fell in the open field and on the roads, the one leading to battle and the other to Gibeon. While the Benjamites were saying, "We are defeating them as before," the Israelites were saying, "Let's retreat and draw them away from the city to the Lord." All the men of Israel moved from their places and took up positions at above Tamar, and the Israelites ambush charged out of his place on the west of Gibeon. Then 10,000 of Israel's finest men made a frontal attack on Gibeon. The fighting was so heavy that the Benjamites did not realize how near disaster was. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and on that day the Israelites struck down 25,100 Benjamites, all armed with sword. Then the Benjamites saw that they were beaten. Now the men of Israel has given way before Benjamin, because they relied on the ambush they had set near Gibeon. The men who had been in ambush made a sudden dash into Gibeon, spread out and put the whole city to the sword. The men of Israel had arranged with the ambush that they should send up a great cloud of smoke from the city, and then the men of Israel would turn in the battle. The Benjamites had begun to inflict the conquest of the men of Israel, about 30, and they said, "We are defeating them as it is first battle." But when the conclusion of the smoke began to rise from the city, the Benjamites turned and said to the smoke and whole city going up into the sky. Then the men of Israel turned to them, and the men of Benjamin were terrified, because they realized that a disaster had come upon them. So they fled before the Israelites in the direction of the desert. But they could not escape the battle, and the men of Israel who came out of the towns caught them down there. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily overran them in the vicinity of Gibeon on the east. 18,000 Benjamites fell, all of them valiant fighters, as they turned and fled toward the desert of the rock of Rimmon. The Israelites cut down 5,000 men along the roads. They kept pressing after Benjamites as far as Gibeon and struck them 2,000 more. On that day, 25,000 Benjamites swordsmen fell, all of them violent fighters, but 600 men turned and fled into the desert to the rock of Rimmon, where they stayed for months. The men of Israel went back to Benjamin and put all the towns to the sword, including the animals and everything else that they found. All the towns they came across they set on fire. 21. The man of Israel has taken the oath to Mizpah. Not one of us will give his daughter in marriage to Benjamin. The people went to battle, where they sat before God until evening, raising their voice and weeping bitterly. "O Lord, the voice God of Israel," they cried. Why has this happened to Israel? Why should the tribe be missing from Israel today? Early the next day, the people built an altar and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Israelites said, "Whom from all tribe of Israel has fallen and assembled before the Lord?" For they had taken solemn oath that anyone who failed to assemble before the Lord at Mizpah should certainly be put to death. Now the Israelites grieved for their brothers, the Benjamites. Today, one tribe is cut off from Israel. They said, "How can we provide wives for those who are left, since we have taken an oath by the Lord not to give them any of the daughters in marriage?" Then they asked, "Which one of the tribe of Israel fallen to assemble before the Lord at Mizpah?" They discovered that no one from Japheth's Gilead had come to the camp for the assembly. For when they counted the people, they found that none of the people of Jerusalem Gilead with them. So the assembly sent 12,000 fighting men with the instructions to go to Jephthah's guild and put to the sword those living there, including the women and children. This is what you are to do, they said. Kill every male and every woman who is not a virgin. They found among the people living in Jephthah's guild 400 young women who had never slept with a man, and they took them to the camp of Shion in Canaan. Then the whole assembly sent an offer of peace to the Benjaminites at the rock of Rimmon. So the Benjaminites returned at that time and were given the women of Jephthah's guild who had been spared. But there were not enough for all of them. The people grieved for Benjamin because the Lord had made a gap in the tribes of Israel. And the elders of the assembly said, with the women of Benjamin destroyed, how shall we provide wives for the men who are left? The Benjamin's survivors must have heirs, they said, so that the tribe of Israel will not be wiped out. We can't give them our daughters as wives, since we Israelites have taken this oath. Cursed be on anyone who gives a wife to the Benjaminites. But look, there is an annual festival of the Lord in Shion, to the north of Bethel and east of the Lord, that goes from Bethel to Shion, on the south of Lebanon. So they instructed the Benjaminites, saying, go and hide in the vineyards, and watch. When the girls of Shion come out to join in the dancing, they rush from the vineyards, and each of you seize a wife from the gifts of Shion, and go to the land of Benjamin. When their two brothers complain to us, we will say to them, do us a kindness by helping them, because we did not get wives from them during the war, and you are innocent, since you did not give your daughters to them. So that is what the Benjamins did. While the girls were dancing, each man caught one and carried her up to be his wife. Then they returned to their inheritance and rebuilt the towns and settled in them. At that time, the Israelites left the place and went home to their tribes and clans, each to his own inheritance. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as he saw fit.